Hello, Kirk.
Do you hear me okay?
Yeah. How are you?
Thanks. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm well. I'm doing well. Everything is good.
Crazy times.
Yeah. Hey,
You
everyone.
said you're going back to Italy soon?
Yes, tomorrow morning I'm flying back. Hopefully, I mean, didn't do my COVID test yet, but I tend to do these pretty often, so it should be negative, so it should be all good. Uh, yeah, so I'm happy about that. I'm gonna take some, definitely not vacation because that's not gonna happen, but at least some time with family and try to juggle things there. So that's good.
That's great. That's super exciting.
Yeah. All right, I'm good. Let's give it a couple of minutes. We had Ariam yesterday. We had Dan, Aiden. So we already did a bit of a deep dive into this week is all about metaverse building. So it's exciting.
Awesome. Yeah, I saw a bit of the video from yesterday. And I think between this week and next week, we'll have a good week of metaverse here. And
Nice.
I think I have some fun exercises over the next couple weeks. I think folks will have fun with.
Awesome.
But yeah, Ariam is great, and Dan is he's I think in real life, not in the metaverse. I think he's only a few blocks away from me.
Really?
We need to meet up at some point, but yeah, Ariam is such a cool platform, and I'm excited that you guys are testing it out and got to hear from Dan and their team.
Yeah. I love Dan. He's great. It's awesome.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Ryan.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, hello.
I know there is like a few people that can't join today, so Rose and Callan will be able to make it. Let me see. Yeah, I think we can go ahead and start, and then people will join if they can.
Sure. Do you mind if I share my screen? I'm going to try this. I'm not
No,
sure.
go for it. Oh, yours. I'll mute myself.
I'll see if it works. I haven't done this. Let's see. Can we see the metaverse here? Let's see. Can you guys see the tab where it says metaverse?
Yes.
Excellent. All right, we're in it. We made it. We're all here now in the metaverse, and that's a great way to start. All right, so yeah, I figure I can kick things off. Hello, everyone. My name is Kirk Finkel, or UntitledXYZ. Super excited to be here chatting with you guys about this topic, which is very special to me. A quick introduction about myself. I'm an artist and architect. I have a background in architecture in the traditional sense, and I have a degree in architecture and urban design. I've been practicing for about the last decade or so, and in the last few years sort of tumbled down this rabbit hole that is the cryptocurrency world. And the hook for me was really thinking about this topic, how the blockchain ecosystem provides this kind of metaverse ecosystem that is super interesting, very new, and has incredible potential for designers and artists and architects. So it's really this new world that's developing, and it's very exciting. This talk itself is going to be basically an overview, kind of a hook as to how I kind of stumbled into this topic in the first place. Not so much about my own work, or not so much about examples, so to speak. It's going to be more about kind of an overview of what this word really means and what it can mean to you guys. And then over the next couple weeks, I think it would be fun to explore different precedents across the metaverse using different apps and exploring these different apps and what they mean for both you as a designer, but also as a user. And then we'll do a little building ourselves using some of the tutorials and some of the more accessible apps. You don't have to own land, you can just start building. Lots of fun tools there that we can start to dive into. So first off, there's this term, the metaverse, and what it means. It means a lot of things. I usually start with the term a collectively accessible virtual environment. So it's a virtual space that can be accessed by more than one person. And that's, I think, what makes it so special. It's also very much a buzzword right now. People are using it for everything. But for me, what determines if it's a metaverse or not is if it can be collectively accessible. And so I think you'll hear the term a lot, but there's kind of an interesting history to it. I think the very first time the word metaverse was used was in 1992 or 1993 for a novel called Snow Crash, which is very much kind of a Matrix type novel about a protagonist, a character who plugs in a world that plugs into kind of an alternate reality of coders, hackers, and pizza delivery is also in there as well. So that was really the first time that the word metaverse was used, just as the internet was kind of beginning to take shape. But for me, I wasn't so familiar with Snow Crash. For me, I was really interested in this from an architectural perspective. And what excited me about this space was actually looking at past examples of how people interpret the blended mix of technology and architecture. So this might be a little bit of an architecture series of slides here, but it's also very much a discussion about kind of how technology has shaped our culture and how that impacts the tools that we use and how we can explore these different types of worlds and ideas. So for me, one of the things that resonated for me was looking at radical architecture of the 60s and 70s. That for me, when I first encountered the metaverse and the blockchain world, I immediately thought of this kind of radical architecture movement. There's a lot of references there that resonate with what the metaverse is looking to achieve or might not achieve. And back in this period for architecture, there were a lot of kind of very small collectives of people. It's very community oriented, lots of collectives of architects who were speculating about what technology meant for society. And we're at a similar inflection point now with looking at how technology is impacting our culture, especially after this COVID year. You know, we're thinking about how we look inward, look outward, where our perspectives lie, and how we all collectively work together, how we collectively live together in this virtual environment that's becoming more mature. So these handful of slides will look a little bit at some of these examples of radical architecture. This is Super Studio. Many of you, I know there are a handful of architects in the group here. I'm sure you're very familiar with Super Studio. To me, this was kind of my hook into the blockchain world. Super Studio did this incredible series of projects. They did these beautiful collages speculating about what society is in the future, what it can mean to kind of be surrounded by your material things or stripped away from your material things. They did these beautiful collages called the Continuous Monument, which was sort of about this super grid that permeated the world in different ways, isolated us to just ourselves, our material goods, encapsulated the world and created this kind of continuous thread across our society. So they did these beautiful collages that you see this super grid just sort of encapsulating the world, going across landscapes, encapsulating cities. And to me, that very much looked like crypto voxels. That was when I first came into the crypto voxels world. This was a few years ago. I was hooked because its simplicity and its kind of white grid made me feel like this was a continuous monument. It was something that kind of permeated across all of these different communities. You could build in your own little capsule. And it very much felt like that first collage here of, you know, that's me basically in 2018, stumbling into crypto voxels and figuring out what is this and what does it mean to be surrounded by a customizable sort of environment that you can build, but also access other people's through this kind of super grid. This is also another example of the radical architecture movement. This is House Rucker Co., who did these really interesting, you could call them wearables. These are masks and kind of headgear that really thinks about the environment at the time. A lot of what was happening in the 60s and 70s was thinking about our place in ecology, our place in the environment we're surrounded by, and our impact on that environment. So a lot of this was kind of in the radical architecture movement was sort of a hard take on what our impact is, but also a humorous take. People had fun with the kind of chaos that was happening in the world. And I just love this image because it's silly, but you know, to me, again, this was crypto voxels. It was very much about, to me, when this was the first kind of big event that I went to in CV, and this was Pranksyland, I think about a year ago, actually now, where it was just this incredible collection of people who were kind of touring together across different builds. This was very much, I mean, you know, right now that CryptoVoxels has this kind of wearables movement. This is across the Decentraland, across all the different worlds. And it has very much of that same energy that inspired, it was very inspiring to me. In Somnium space as well, you wear little TVs on your head if you're in Somnium space. So this is a view of an opening I had a few months ago at a staircase build that I was working on. And it's very surreal to see one another's heads on these kind of TVs you can cluster together. So I just thought this was a fun image. And of course, you guys heard earlier this week, or yesterday maybe, from Arium Spaces. And Arium has this incredible environment where people are these little pixel heads that can kind of move around, clustered together with one another. So it's of that same mindset, of that same energy of having this kind of like, thinking about customizing your look and feel and your head really in as it takes shape in this kind of virtual environment. Another really inspiring example to me is a group called Archigram. Archigram creates, similar to Super Studio, similar to House Rucker Co., lots of these speculative sort of environments that have to do with infrastructure. And a lot of these have to do with, one example is a plugin city. This is plugin city and pop-up city. These were kind of speculations about how technology would impact the speed at which cities are able to manifest themselves, that buildings are able to manifest themselves. And there's a lot of overlap here with how the kind of current metaverse worlds populate. You can have a building that kind of grows super quickly overnight. You can populate an environment almost immediately, and that carries the same kind of look and feel and inspiration as these original Archigram drawings, which I'm just in love with and wanted an excuse to show these. This is a walking city where the cities are mobile and they can plug into different places across the world. These were very sort of conceptual thoughts about what cities could be as they start to blend with technology. And I think we're really starting to see some of that come to fruition in these blockchain metaverses, where buildings can exist on tabs on a website. You can teleport to different places. You can assemble a building overnight. There's the same kind of like feel that was really exciting to me when I first stumbled into this space. And even honestly, a lot of the aesthetics of the 60s and 70s, looking at how they imagine these futuristic environments to be, this is, they just did these incredible collages that are about these kind of neon futuristic environments that are sort of a play off of our obsession with consumer culture, but also in a fun way, kind of bringing these different topics to light. And this to me reminded me of Decentraland, this particular image by Archigram. And, you know, Decentraland is this environment that has this kind of clash of different aesthetics, different places. It's very gamer-like, it's very, very busy in some ways. And each metaverse has its own sort of flavor. CryptoVoxels, obviously, to me, is more of the Super Studio flavor, where Decentraland is much more of the Archigram sort of feeling. And it's interesting that each of them have their own kind of take on what a virtual world can be. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about this space right now, is that each environment has its own unique flavor, own style, and you can kind of pick and choose which one you want to explore, which one you want to build in. And it has very much that same vibe as these kind of collections of places that felt very much like back in the 70s, when people had these clusters of different ideas of what a city could be, what the world would look like, and how technology impacts it. And here's an image of the Continuous Monument by Super Studio. To me, you know, this image is really in the end about kind of the connection, about humanity, and about what technology and how technology impacts our connection with one another. I think what's happening right now is a really interesting moment where people are beginning to connect in a very fundamentally new way that we've never been able to connect before. And it's through this kind of superstructure. It's through this kind of like encompassing infrastructure of blockchain that allows us to interact in a way that we've never been able to. We can interact and meet one another and collaborate with one another without ever really meeting one another. So to me, this image is very much of that same thought, where you have these silhouettes of two people who you can't really discern, but you can see that touch and that hand meeting one another. And I think that's very much of the spirit that CryptoVoxels and Decentraland and Somnium Space, Arium, all of these places are bringing us for the first time. And this is the last image actually of the metaverse here, where this was a year ago during a virtual Black Lives Matter march. And to me, this really felt like that last image where it's about humanity coming together for a cause and coming together for a movement where, you know, we walked a whole avenue in CryptoVoxels for George Floyd. And along the way, you can see it at the map in the bottom a little bit here. You can see people walking together in a line, and along the way you see different sort of graffiti on the side or images on the side that say things like "Justice for Floyd." And this is a really powerful moment where everyone is indoors. Everyone has had a incredibly challenging year, and we all came together for this virtual march. And I think it really showed a lot about the community that is in CryptoVoxels, but also in this blockchain space, where people want to come together to fight for new things and make the world a better place. So this last image here really reminded me a lot of the Super Studio kind of feeling. And I just really like this image. So back to the metaverse here, what this word means, what it can do. I think it comes with a lot of different flavors. As we said, the blockchain metaverse is unique because it is both a visual environment that you can experience together simultaneously. But what I think distinguishes it and takes it a bit further is the fact that it's also an economic fabric. It's a technology fabric. It's something that carries lots of different types of information with it. It's not just a visual experience. It's a whole socioeconomic sort of experience that's blended together. And I think that's what actually taps more into the snow crash idea, is that you're there with your whole identity. Your Ethereum address says so much about you. Your Ethereum address is this kind of artifact of your existence on the blockchain. And that's a really powerful thing. And I think we're just beginning to see the impact of having that digital footprint, that digital fingerprint, as you start to explore these virtual worlds. So the big question for me, and I think for all of us, is what ultimately is this? I think this is the same question that was asked in the 60s and 70s. Will this new wave of technology bring us a sense of utopia, or will it bring us a sense of dystopia? And right now, we have some decisions to make. We have to decide what this blockchain environment is ultimately doing for us. Is it bringing us something new that the physical world couldn't bring, and giving us stronger access to equity, to ownership, to connection, to other people, to new experiences? Or is it further isolating us into our own sort of boxes that further kind of creates an issue of divide? So I think there's a really interesting challenge now for all of us who are early users of these applications and early builders of the things that we can experience in these places. What do we want this to be? And I think right now it's a bit of both. It's a bit of, from my experience, it does two things. And I think that's because we're so early in this environment and we're so new in the space. These precedents are still being built. But this is a big question. I think this is going to be a topic as we explore for the next couple weeks here. So this was a short talk just to kind of get a palette for what the blockchain metaverse is, and how, from my perspective, it has so many of these similarities with other moments in history that were these inflection points with how we look at society and tech. So this week, I think it would be fun to do a little bit of homework with everyone, with all of the residents. I think we can use the architecture channel to explore different buildings. And so for the next few days, I have, I believe the next Metaverse talk that Nicole has me signed up for here is next week. So until that time, I think it would be a lot of fun for us to explore a different Metaverse environment that we haven't been to before. Take a screenshot of it and send it to the channel. And that way we can explore and get takeaways from folks about what those environments were. And I think the question with each of them is, was it a utopia or was it a dystopia? So I'll write all of this down and share it in the channel, but I wanted to finish this chat with, let's do an exercise like that. And I think it'll be a great way for all of us to explore these different places and also have these discussions of what kind of place was it to you? Was it something that gives you optimism, or was it something that gives you a little bit of apprehension about what the implications of a space like that could be? And afterwards, next week, the talk will be much more focused on building. So there are a lot of great ways that we can begin to build in Metaverse apps that don't require land, don't require us to own anything. They're just quick ways to kind of build and share. And I think that would be a great thing, next exercise to do. But first, I think having us ask that question of utopia, dystopia would be a lot of fun. So that's really it for this first discussion. Then I figured I could open it up to questions. And afterwards, I'll be very active in the chat this week, start sharing different examples of things. But I think I can stop the chat here real quick, see if this works. And can you guys hear me still?
Yeah.
Excellent. So yeah, that's essentially the kind of first look at this, but very much open to any questions if people have questions or just thoughts about that question of utopia, dystopia. I think, Nicole, if it's okay this week to give a little homework of, do a site visit, take a picture and that kind of thing, if that works okay.
Of course, that's amazing.
Awesome. There's a lot of stuff to visit. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me now. I know that was a quick kind of overview of things, but we can also follow up in the chat if it's too early or too late where you are.
I have a question. So are we going to visit the metaverses like CryptoVoxel and Somnium Spaces and take screenshots from that place we find interesting?
Yes, I think I will follow up with a list of different places that we can visit just with a browser, and it'll be pretty easy to just hop into different environments. I think it'll be a good exercise for us to start breaking into these worlds and seeing which buildings we like and start sharing some different places with one another.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Maybe we can ask if anybody here, like what metaverse they have like experienced already. What are the thoughts, whether it's CryptoVoxel, Somnium Space, or others?
Yeah, it was really interesting, the results from the survey that I posted in the architecture channel, to see that I think an equal number of you guys have visited Decentraland or CryptoVoxels, only or a little bit less have been in Somnium Space. But yeah, that's a great point. Like, are there any sort of feelings you guys get from visiting these different places, or do you have a preference of one environment versus another?
No preferences, just I think it depends on some spaces are sort of like they provide a bit more like seamless navigation of sort, and some spaces seem to be a bit, I don't know, like they're not lagging, but necessarily, but yeah, like they all provide a bit of a different experience. Also a question, sorry if you don't mind. You mentioned once, oh, okay, thank you. You mentioned that you wanted to share some tutorials so we can sort of start familiarizing ourselves before we sort of jump into practice. So that would be nice if we can have a few tutorials from you that we can sort of have.
Definitely. Absolutely. I will have links for places to visit, but also for those who have also visited a lot of these places already, I'll leave links to start building. There are a handful of different tutorials we can look at for different, I'll do maybe one tutorial per world. And I think that'd be a great place to start. And we can start building things together and then sharing some screenshots about what we're working on. And then I think, next week too, it'd be fun to visit one another's buildings, which I think we can do in some of, I think we can do that in CryptoVoxels without actually owning land.
Can I ask a quick question, if you don't mind?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, I was just curious, out of the group here, how many people have been to Decentraland? Just because Decentraland is something that, you kind of have to set up an account and connect your MetaMask, unlike CryptoVoxels, which you can just jump in through even a smartphone. So out of everyone here, has everyone been to Decentraland, or like half? I'm just kind of curious, like percentage, because I think it's a little bit of a different experience just because you kind of have to go through like logging in, and sometimes this, I think, limits people from traveling to that particular metaverse.
I did, just for, I think 2 or 3 times, but for no more than.
So I guess no one's been there then.
I think there was a survey. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yes, when I saw your survey, and I put that I did, actually, I saw Insomnium, I was Insomnium. I really like that space. It's different from Decentraland as I understood, because I've been in Decentraland as a visitor. I didn't create an account or whatever, but it's different experience. It's like a game, and you just like running, and it's. I think you have less control than Insomnia, and for instance, I don't know. I suppose I've been in Decentraland, but I didn't create account.
The reason I just mentioned it because, oh, I'm sorry, I'll finish real quick, is there's a great arts district that I highly recommend checking out in Decentraland. And I think it kind of is unique to Decentraland in the sense that the architecture there is somewhat pushing the boundaries and not really fitting into the typical like mold that I think most of the space is built on. So I can give you guys a link, and if no one's heard of it before, it might be worth checking out.
Excellent. Yeah,
Also,
Ryan, please send that in the architecture channel. It'd be amazing for people to see. I think these different districts are a great way for people to explore not just one building, but like there are these multiple sort of neighborhoods that come together with different themes that are really cool.
Can
also,
we build on crypto voxels without having a land, like to just try?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Can we start building on crypto voxels without having a land, like buying a land, just to have fun and try out the builder?
Yes. So with both crypto voxels and Decentraland, and actually Somnium Space too, you can build. I think Somnium Space you need to download an app for PC to build, but with crypto voxels there is a link that I'll share in the channel where you can start building, and you can even share your building with other people. It just, you'll only be able to visit it as one person. So it's not on the metaverse, it's just an app where you can kind of test out some building and then share with folks to prototype ideas.
Oh, great.
also to follow up to what Madina said, we sort of have been into few spaces. It's like every time someone has like an exhibition and you see a tweet and you just follow the tweet and you just visit an exhibition or space. So we have seen like different spaces of sort, but we don't have experience building actually, unfortunately. So that what will be great if we can like have, yeah, like you said, you're gonna share tutorials, and that's what we actually look forward to, because not having an experience building, I think we need some time to sort of get our foot in the game.
Excellent. So yeah, for those who have, and Ryan, I was surprised that, you know, a lot of folks, it seemed like, have visited different buildings in Decentraland. It was equal number to those that have visited in CryptoVoxels. And so for those who have visited already and already fluent with visiting different exhibitions or different things, I'll post the tutorials, then you can get started on that. That way, you know, you can, if you're more of an architect that wants to learn how to build, you can start on that earlier rather than, you know, if you wanted to explore a different build that inspires you as an artist, we can start to share those in the channel as well.
Hi, I'd like to share my experience. I visited a building in CryptoVoxels and one in Decentraland recently. Last month there was this event called Crypto Art Week Asia, and then they had this. They built this an event space in CryptoVoxels. So I'm not a gamer. Like my first time going into this kind of space, I went in. It's kind of easy to pick up, and what was really cool is they had this. They had some kind of a portal, so it will take you to a special special space, which is probably another built in another plot of land, but also in CryptoVoxels. And as you go through the portal, you arrive next space in the air, and then you drop. And then that space itself is called drop zone. wherein the artists have their drop for that event. So they have a gallery there. It's quite an amazing experience. Yeah. So I haven't really visited other buildings, but it was kind of it created quite an impact on experience wise. I just want to share it.
Oh, that's great. You participated in a true airdrop. That's actually an airdrop.
Yeah.
I think like that's one of the things that is such a eye-opening experience for these worlds, is that one of the benefits of having metaverse architecture is you have different rules, different contexts to build, play, and experience with. And I think the buildings and those environments that really stick with us are the ones that provide a totally different experience to a building that you typically walk into that will have a door, have windows, have a ceiling. But the ones where, you should definitely share that example if there's a link to it in the architecture channel. That way others can fly through the world and teleport into different spaces. A great example.
Sure.
I have a question, Kirk. Like now you say the metaverse needs to be like connecting people, so it can be metaverse. Before I thought it was like more related something with virtual reality. Like, I mean, if you create a space and then it's in virtual reality, like it was a metaverse. So yeah, like what's your opinion about it? Like, I mean, the relationship of metaverses, virtual reality, and like if you make something just an architectural building in a small space, like could it be a miniverse? Like if there is no people, it would be worse.
That's a great point. And I think everyone has a very different definition of metaverse. I think to me personally, and that's because this term is still new, people are still trying to figure out what it means virtually. For me personally, I think a true metaverse is when multiple people can be there at once. I think that's the magic that people are trying to capture with metaverse apps. And that's why, a lot of these blockchain apps where two people can kind of collide together from around the world and be in a space at the same time. I think that's the magic of what this technology is going towards. And but I think it's not wrong to say a VR or any other sort of like building that you can visit is not a metaverse. I think I think it depends on an individual's definition of it. For me personally, especially coming from a background as an urban designer, what attracted me to this was that multiple people can be there at once. And I think that's where you have these kind of serendipitous meetings of people from different backgrounds. I was in a building that I had built in Somnium Space the other day in VR, and I was taking site photos. So like a normal architect, you go to your building and you're taking photos, and then someone comes up and starts waving at me, and we have a conversation. That to me is a metaverse moment where you have someone who comes there and it's unexpected, and you have a meeting with someone that you've never met before.
Thank you. Also, a small question: which metaverses, platforms, support GLTF objects?
Great question. GLTF objects. I think let's see. I believe Decentraland and Somnium Space have different ways of implementing that type of object. I think ultimately, when you upload custom objects to Somnium Space, it needs to be an FBX file. I think so, but I think that can be easily converted from a GLTF. But if you also want to exhibit your GLTF files on Somnium Space, they have this cool kind of exhibit platform option. So on the perimeter of a building that you have, you can drop these kind of artifacts along the edge. And I think those are GLTF files. So you do have the option with Somnium Space. And I think there might be more flexibility with Decentraland. dropping those in. And then with crypto voxels, I think it's pretty much Vox models. So those have to be optimized through Vox model software.
Thank you.
I have a question too, more on the utopia dystopia thing. During the 60s and the 70s, there was this idea that the humanity will be freed from the necessity of work, and so many of the architecture or the utopias you showed.
There was something
this
I think Untitled had mentioned earlier about using the metaverse as this collective experience and kind of extending the usage of it from the physical world. And I was just curious if anyone had any I don't know, beliefs or understandings or thoughts.
Ryan, I think Andrea was asking a question. Sorry.
Oh, I didn't hear it. Sorry.
Andrea,
Yes.
sorry.
I think
I'm sorry.
wanted to help Andrea. Last time Andrea had some difficulty with the microphone and a few of us muted him. So I think if Ryan will unmute Andrea. Yeah, it was few classes ago. Many may have Andrea on mute still. We figured it out a few days ago.
Okay,
Yeah.
I could hear you. Kirk, could you hear him?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay, go ahead, Andrea.
Thank you so much. And so there was this idea of political idea of this architecture as a place for entertainment, just for entertainment and just meeting with other people, things like that. But now we hear
I
a lot
can't hear you
of
anymore. Can you guys hear him?
Oh, I can hear him. I can also repeat. I'll repeat the question too,
Yes,
if that helps.
because it was
just
interesting.
to make it short. Now we hear a lot of this idea of people starting to work in game space or metaverse space, like doing and selling stuff. So what's your position, your ideas about this?
It's a great question. It's about thinking, if I understand the question correctly, it's, you know, the premise of these, you're saying the premise of the architecture in the 60s and 70s was thinking about kind of a post-work sort of environment that was impacted by technology, where these kind of themes collided with one another. And I think it's a really interesting point. I think right now we're at a very unusual point in history where technology is actually making us work more, especially in the crypto world. I think, you know, everyone runs on a 24/7 sort of cycle. But I think ultimately what this metaverse sort of theme is doing, or metaverse infrastructure is doing, is actually going eventually to provide us with the technology to perhaps work less, to be honest. I think because you have it's a communication fabric, but it's also an economic fabric. And that's what's super exciting about these apps that use Ethereum, to me, or any blockchain, is that they have the economic component of it, and they also have the communication or people component. So to your point about, I think you mentioned wearables or different sort of things like that, I think I don't think you could call it passive income, but I think the whole premise that you can set up a wearable shop in any of these worlds and people can visit from any time zone at any time throughout the world through just a click and potentially buy one of your NFTs that's on display. I don't think that's passive income, but I think that provides access that liberates us from some of the time constraints that we're used to, of a 9-to-5 job, of having a retail storefront that might be open for limited hours. Now you have the option of something that is immediately global. And I think that's a really, really powerful thing that does also resonate with a lot of the kind of like 60s and 70s imagination of what architecture can be in this post-work world. I hope we come to a point where the focus is more about kind of building and imagining new things and making the world a better place instead of working more. But I think we're at an interesting moment now where the technology can provide us with a lot of options and a lot of flexibility. And that's super exciting. So that's a long way of saying, yes, I think what we're seeing is this tech that has two modes, kind of communication fabric and economic fabric. I think we're going to see long-term impact of that.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Yeah, Andrea said thank you. Those again here. It was a great question. If anyone else has a question, feel free to chime in. Or Ryan, if you had a point earlier, if you want to discuss.
Yeah, sure. I'm glad I got to hear what you had to say, Andrea. I got you unmuted now. I think it was like last week somebody mentioned something. But just building on what Untitled is talking about is, I think that with the Metaverse, there's so many opportunities, especially the opportunity to create like we've never had before. Just due to the fact that there's less constraints and less boundaries than we have in the physical world. And as architects, there's, we don't have to work around gravity or electrical or structural foundation. And we can really open our minds and completely redefine what our interpretation is as architecture for architects or designers, or for whatever that matter might be. And I just think that it's an excellent time right now to really think about how we can connect each other or extend our, I don't know, narratives, you can call it, from what our artwork is into a physical space that's you can actually meet and congregate and have other people interact. So it's a great opportunity to open a discussion or create a new narrative that we maybe weren't able to in the past.
That's absolutely it. It's an amazing point. And I think what we're seeing now is the ability to strip away some of the things that honestly, I think a lot of architects do love and enjoy, but I do think that it does open up and free up opportunity to explore new things that are more fundamentally about connecting with other people. And I think that's that magic that I was talking about. I was in a conversation a couple days ago with some of my old architecture friends, and who were all complaining about parking garage requirements for the buildings that they were working on. And this is, I have a couple architect friends in Miami, and if anyone has visited Miami, it's a heavy car culture there, and same thing in most cities in the United States. But your buildings are heavily driven by things like parking requirements. And however many kind of whatever capacity your building is, you have to also provide an option for parking. And it was just funny because I was saying, like, you guys are still doing, physical buildings, worrying about parking, and this is nuts. And the whole thing that they were saying was they're trying to argue with the zoning to kind of reduce the number of parking spots that's required for a building, just because people don't drive as much as they used to. But we're still working within the rules of parking regulation that was developed actually in the 60s and 70s. Maybe a little earlier than that, or maybe a little bit more recent than that. But the point being, the digital world can be so much more agile and adaptive. In the same way Archigram had these pop-up and plug-in cities, we can adapt and adjust to these new rules so quickly, and there's less waste. There's less kind of residue that you would have from a parking garage that's in concrete. So there's a lot of implications that this world that we're all building together will have. And I think we're just beginning to see architects take notice of this. And I'm very curious to see what will happen as a result.
I have another question.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a little bit silly, but do you know of some Metaverse place or way to avoid the rules of visual perspective.
Ooh,
like
great.
some kind of display of, I don't know exactly how to explain, but something more.
For those who didn't hear, Andrea just asked if there's a kind of example of a metaverse plot or example that sort of challenges or breaks the rules a little bit about visual things and experiential things on a plot, if I'm interpreting that the right way. And I think there are not enough examples of that, but you can. What's exciting about something like Decentraland, for example, each object that you put in Decentraland, you need a corresponding object that is a collider geometry. So it's kind of a ghost geometry that basically interacts with an avatar. So it's a really interesting question. I was thinking about this the other day because I've been working on a lot of Decentraland builds, and if you have, so this, I'll share an experience. This might not totally answer your question, but I uploaded a shape into, it was an archway in Decentraland, and I had not resolved the collider geometry correctly. What I had was, for those of us who are 3D modelers, I had inverted normals on the geometry surfaces. So the surfaces of this invisible shape that was supposed to help people walk through the gateway correctly, the surfaces were pointing internally and not externally. So what happened was, when I walked through when I walked into the archway, I stuck to it like a magnet because it was interpreting me walking up to the surface, but then it thought that the inside of the surface was the outside. So I actually got stuck and I had to restart the program. And this is a pretty common issue for if you ever visit a build and get stuck in between it, it's because people didn't invert their normals on the surfaces. So that's kind of a funny example maybe of architecture gone wrong. But I think there's a lot of design opportunity there, to be honest, to play with these ghost geometries where they can direct an avatar in different ways or maybe trap them, which is kind of, if you're talking about an escape room in the metaverse, maybe that could be a fun thing to explore.
Incredible topic. I really think that's a powerful thing to consider. We've been talking about like really trying to understand how we can use the metaverse to reinterpret space. And it's like really building on what you just said, is like, imagine that instead of like actually walking through a gallery, like the gallery could, or the space could actually like you're static and then it could actually transfer around you. And that's actually the way it is. Instead of like navigating the space navigates you. And I think these are all awesome opportunities to really start to rethink how something can be interpreted.
Definitely. I think that's where we get real native metaverse architecture, something that just can't exist in the physical world. You're playing with the rules of what these worlds are giving you. And I think we just see too many doors and windows and stuff. And, I'm guilty of that. I love doors and windows, but I think it's because they're a familiar hook. But what we'll see when we see people start to explore these kind of like new rules, basically. And I think that's where real interesting sort of architecture comes in.
Certainly. And Christopher Nolan, I think, is a really great producer, director that we can actually, start to see a little bit of this mindset or this interpretation going on, because he's always playing with gravity, with the notion of space, with time in all of his films.
Definitely. That's a really good one. And I think we don't see enough buildings playing with time. Every virtual environment has its own time cycle. Somnium Space is maybe the one that resonates for me the most, but have a very kind of quick time cycle, and you can experience a building in VR at night or during the day. And I think there needs to be more play with, just tracking that time and using that as a way to integrate with your building. Yeah, it's great. It's really interesting. And I think looking at film too, and looking at these kind of, I don't know if I would call it a sci-fi film, but looking at kind of like these films that reinterpret how space can work and how architecture works. Film and architecture work very much closely together. And I think there's a lot to learn there with how we experience these metaverse worlds, because we're also kind of filming our experience as we go in some ways.
I think about something like about the perspective that Andre asked. There's a lot of computer games using isometry instead of perspective. It means that in real world, the things that are far away is smaller to our eyes. But in isometry, everything is in the same size, and it's kind of playing with perspective. And there can be an isometric metaverse, for example.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I think I think the whole concept of perspective is really fascinating with these worlds, because all of the metaverses that we have so far are really just pretty close to what we have physically. I don't think we've seen yet an environment that really challenges our kind of whole notion of perspective, even sort of the basic rules of navigating a place. We still walk on land. Even if we do teleport, we're still sort of bound by an avatar that has legs and hands and a head. But I think, you know, you're absolutely right about thinking about new ways to navigate and new ways to explore. And I think we're going to start to see some examples of that. I hope that maybe there's a metaverse where everything is flat, or everything is navigated as a kind of, you know, isometric maze or axonometric maze. Or, you know, instead of building from the ground up, maybe everyone is part of this massive 3D environment where you can build in the sky and there's no reference to gravity. I think that would provide a much more dynamic experience that's more true to what the technology is offering, and totally relieves us from the constraints of gravity. I hope we start to see metaverses explore that. And, you know, maybe if crypto voxels took away gravity for a week and people could build in the sky, we'd have a different thing here, which would be fun.
And I want to tell about an example I saw on VR. Like there's a circular corridor, and if you go around 360 degrees, you can't reach the same point. You need to turn twice to reach the same point, like 720 degrees.
I think I've seen that example. It's brilliant. It was like there was an infinite corridor example, and it's just like playing with how you have to move in a VR thing. I think I saw a similar video maybe, but I think the whole playing with that whole concept of sometimes when you're in VR, you're either teleporting from one spot to another, or if you have a track that you're walking on, there's kind of limited range of movement. I think we can start to play with that, because if you assume that someone who's visiting your world or your building is in a VR set, it's unlikely that they're in a VR set in a football field and can run around your entire building. It's more likely they're in an apartment and they have maybe 5 to 10 square feet of room around them to kind of navigate something. So that's the new kind of thing that we're building for. And I think it's just really cool to think about how people can start to design for that, instead of designing a building that assumes people have a state-of-the-art VR set that is in a giant stadium, which would be nice, but we don't, I certainly don't have that living in an apartment in Brooklyn. Does anyone have a VR set in a giant warehouse that they want to share their experience with? Or I guess, does anyone who has used virtual reality or has a VR headset?
I have the VR headset, but I don't have the giant warehouse. I have a small room. But yes, I experienced a lot, and like it wasn't called Metaverse, but there were Metaverses, like people come and socialize in some 3D environment.
Do you mean VR chat?
I have a VR headset, but I use it for mostly sculpting in Gravity Sketch or Medium. Like I visited some metaverses like CryptoVoxels and Somnium. It's really fun. Also, Star Wars games fun.
Excellent. Yeah, I've been in one of my earlier experiences was this is about a year ago, but this was in VR chat that was just mentioned, and I think at a super rare exhibit, and yeah, just really cool to kind of hop into something like that and see people. And VR is a pretty surreal thing, and we're still so early with this technology. And I know that you guys have a specific VR chat later this month as well, and I'm going to tune into that because I'm looking forward to learning more about it. I'm still, like you guys, like anyone here, we're all very, very new to this technology because the technology itself is new. I don't think anyone can claim to be an expert in this stuff yet, and that's what's so exciting, is that we're all building this stuff simultaneously. And yeah, very exciting. But yeah, does anyone have any other questions?
What if we don't have VR glasses? Then we do not have.
Then
VR.
you will have much better eyesight than I will have in the next couple of years. No, it's totally fine if you don't have a VR headset. There are many ways to explore the same type of world. You can even visit Somnium space without the VR headset. And I think VR is just another layer of visiting and exploring a place. But I think most of these worlds you can also visit through a computer, and I think the combination of the two are interesting, but you certainly don't need to have a VR set to access and build.
Oh, so we don't have to have VR headset to build?
No, I think it depends on the platform, but I think ultimately I have built buildings for VR that I've never actually seen in VR, which is, not great, but I think you can still walk around them as an avatar and on a computer and experience it that way. So I think there are different ways to build for that. But I have to say that experiencing and even visiting a building with, for example, a client in VR is a very surreal, cool experience. And it's like going through a punch list of changes with someone and pointing at it and walking over to different moments of the building with a headset on is pretty neat experience. I think Vertical Crypto Art said that everyone here is getting free Oculus headsets. Is that right, Nicole?
No, unfortunately, I'm not there yet. I'm sorry, guys.
You got us excited.
Ledger, yes, but Oculus, not yet.
Everyone
Maybe
look under your chair.
soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a VR headset either, to be honest. So I've never actually experienced the metaverse with VR either. Yeah.
I think everyone's eyesight will be a lot better if they're not in that. I'm going to need glasses soon, I'm pretty sure. I've got terrible, terrible headaches when I get out of VR.
I did try the Oculus once, like a couple of years ago. But yeah, I haven't actually experienced it ever since, to be honest. Santiago is saying that there are already some VR NFTs built directly on Hikenunc. Yeah, actually Sam, who's going to be leading the class, I think it's next weekend, Saturday or Sunday, I can't remember, with VR and AR. He does some really, he does some VR art on Hikenunc already. Really cool one as well.
Excellent. Yeah, Sam's work in VR is amazing. If people have seen the channel where he's posted his work, so I'll be learning from him as well in that discussion. I haven't gotten into much sculpting myself and would love to learn more about his process. So I think that'll be really exciting to dive into the VR side.
I think maybe also since a lot of people here have been to like the various metaverse worlds, would be interesting to share maybe for next week. Let me know what you think about this, Kirk, but like maybe like exhibitions or like spaces that you found really, I don't know, appealing to you or like interesting. And we could all share them and talk about like, you know, why. I think there's like, I mean, for me, like one of the latest ones that I saw that was like amazing. I know I've been saying this for like 2 weeks, but I just loved it, was the pupilla dilatada on Arium space. I just found that was like incredible.
Oh yeah.
Really cool. But yeah, it would be great to, if people, especially if you've experienced already a few of the metaverses, like maybe some exhibitions or like spaces that you really liked.
Perfect. Would it be possible, I was talking a little bit with the Mocha folks, if next week could be actually like a site visit. We can actually visit different buildings all together and then use this voice chat to coordinate as people get lost or have maybe technical issues.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's amazing.
Awesome. I think that would be fun to do a multiverse tour. So we visit like one in each environment and just maybe for like 10 minutes in each one. And I was talking with Shivani a little bit about that, and maybe we can meet her in Mocha or something.
Yeah, I would love that. And also for you know, the like people here who are listening that don't know or maybe don't remember, because I spoke about it like at the very start of the program. Shivani and Mocha and Colburn and all the team there, they are like giving us, you know, the land in Somnium space to build. So there is that possibility for everyone here to basically, you know, come up with like a build for the Somnium space land that they have available. So that's exciting.
Yes, and yeah, folks I'll be kind of a guide for that if you guys have questions as you start to build. Honestly, feel free to message me anytime. I might not respond immediately, but message me anytime with builder questions. After this chat, I'll share a ton of resources. And then I think next week, let's do a site visit on Monday, I think, and visit a few different builds and examples of things where it's, honestly, I think the focus of exploring this might be, let's look at architecture or environments that pushes the boundaries a little bit about what we think about traditional architecture. I think that would be super fun. And it might be a mess because the technology is new, but if you have an internet connection, we'll make it happen.
Great. Looking forward to that. Do we have any more questions? In any case, like Kirk is around in the architectural channel, so just feel free to redirect any comments or questions. And I guess for next week, yeah, if we can all like, you know, experience, go into some of the metaverse lands and just maybe, as Kirk said, like take screenshots or find interesting like exhibitions and spaces that you enjoyed. I think Walt has a last minute question. What do you think about having the same environment in multiple different metaverses, or should they be unique like NFTs?
Ooh, that's a really interesting question. I think it's an interesting challenge to make the same thing across worlds. I've thought about this a lot recently for a couple different projects I'm working on. And I think I would lean more towards unique, because I think part of my work before getting into this space was a lot about building locally. That was a big part of my practice before I turned into turned crypto. But I think I think each world has such unique and interesting building techniques and different building constraints that I would lean more towards that everything you build, it should be unique per world, I think, is my feeling for it. But I think it's an interesting exercise if you were to try to build the same thing in crypto voxels and then again in Somnium space and have this kind of teleportation where you can go between them. It might be like a multiverse sort of experience. So I think it could be really fun, but I think each world has its own constraints that make it unique. And yes, for next week or until next week, so over the next few days, it would be amazing if people share their own experiences in the architecture channel by, I think the homework should be visit a build, visit a experience in one of these metaverses. It can be, you can define your own metaverse too. You don't have to use my definition. So if there's a virtual experience or a digital experience that you want to share, please do take a screenshot. And then I think the question around it should be, was this a utopia for you or was this a dystopia? And what are your thoughts about that? I think that'll be a fun way to look at different apps and how different buildings evoke different responses.
Great. Thank you so much, Kirk.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for having me, guys. I'm really, this is an awesome program that you put together, Nicole, and this is just a very cool opportunity to explore these things. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. See you, well, with Kirk next week. Yeah, have a good day.
Thank
Guys,
you.
thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.